Welcome back to My 100 Dresses, a 100 painting series where I am painting women in fabulous dresses, all based off the children's book, The 100 Dresses by Eleanor Estes, and this is painting number 15. Quick PSA, the audio in this video is not the greatest. I am under a bit of a time crunch after traveling for about a month, so I just want to say thank you for putting up with it for this week. This week, I want to share a little bit more about what is inspiring to me and how I come up with the ideas behind the paintings. So often my ideas start from a story. I really like the idea of narrative artwork. That's part of the reason why I write poetry. Growing up, my dad was an amazing storyteller. He used to read books to us a lot of the time, before bed. And he was such a good reader that I actually asked him my senior year of high school to reread the Chronicles of Narnia to me pretty much every night before bed, which is kind of a crazy thing as a 17-year-old to want, but he was quite literally that amazing of a storyteller. And so what ended up happening is my siblings kind of piled in and it became a whole family affair. Anyway, so a lot of my inspiration comes from the stories that make up our lives. The way that I think and the way that I find things beautiful a lot of the times comes down to the people that I'm around and the experiences that they have, the experiences that I get to share with them, and even just the experiences that I get to read about from strangers when they share their stories. And so a lot of the time when I'm thinking about what I want to create, I usually start with a feeling that goes with some sort of story, and then within that feeling I start to ask myself, how and which way do I want to share that feeling in color? And so from there I kind of wrestle through, and a lot of the time I don't necessarily have a very clear, very specific, like I could write out exactly the story or meaning behind the painting, but I kind of have like a gut feeling that I wrestle with. And so as I'm wrestling through that and kind of looking through different pictures and colors that I find inspirational that kind of go along with that gut feeling, that's when I really start to bring it together and say, okay, I kind of have this image in my mind, I'm gonna go for it. And a big part of it is really trusting that my gut feeling and the narrative that I'm trying to capture, even though it's not clear yet, it's kind of like a brave jump of faith to say, I'm going to start this painting knowing that I will find it along the way. I will track down that feeling and be able to put specific words to it. I'll be able to name this painting exactly the right name that it should be. And although sometimes I know that I had a time, there's a lot of times that I don't. And it really is kind of a figuring out the painting as I go. Now, what I'm not saying is I don't typically start paintings just blank canvas and no idea. That's not at all what I'm describing. What I'm describing is I do a lot of the kind of deep wrestling pre-starting a painting. I just don't always know exactly the answer to that deep wrestling when I start. So I would say to anyone that is an artist, just trying to step up to a blank canvas is never a good idea if you haven't done any sort of sourcing or any sort of wrestling through, what do I want to paint? It doesn't have to be deep. For me, I really like stories, and so a lot of the time there's a little bit more of a message that goes with it, but it doesn't always have to be that way. What I will say is you do need to have some sort of idea. So it could be that gut feeling you've been wrestling with. It could be a very specific message that you want to get across. It could be a very specific image or story. Whatever that is, you do want to have kind of an idea ahead of time. And the reason why is as you are painting, there's a lot of fear and resistance that is going to come up and try and keep you from finishing that painting. And so when you're feeling that, when you start to kind of detach from the piece because the fear or the resistance is making you say, I don't know if I want it that bad, being able to go back to that initial gut feeling, that initial wrestling, that initial inspiration behind the piece or that initial idea, that's kind of like your beacon of light at the end of the tunnel when you get into these messy middle phases. So there is more that goes into my process. I'll share more of the tactical. This is a little bit more of, the mental side, emotional side. the side that we don't usually get to hear about. Usually we just talk about practical things. So I thought it'd be more fun to share kind of what it looks like for me on the inside, what my internal experience is like as I come up with these ideas. But yeah, this is painting number 15. Fun story is I actually used a friend of mine for the model, which was really, really cool. And in pulling this together, I wanted to make it feel really lush, so I added in really big flowers, really big fruits, and I love how it turned out. Thank you so much for joining. I will see you next week for painting number 16.